Okay, so today's project, I'm gonna make dill pickles, and I haven't made pickles since I was like a little kid, helping my mom, and totally forgot the process. But I called her the other day and had her remind me the process and give me her recipe. So today I'm gonna try it out and make some pickles. So what you need for dill pickles are, of course, your key ingredients. You need some little cucumbers. Um, You're going to need some fresh dill, and you're going to need some garlic. And these three things, the key ingredients, you should be able to grow yourself, or at least buy off a local farmer. And that's what I do. I bought it off a local farmer. Stuff that you might not be able to get locally, of course, you're going to need some pickling salts, and you're going to need some alum, A-L-U-M, alum powder. And alum powder helps keep your dill pickles crunchy. So those are your ingredients, and then equipment-wise, you're going to need at least one big canning pot, and I'm actually going to use two because I'm going to use one to sterilize the jars, and I'm going to use the other one to make the brine mixing, the salty fluid mixing. But you could use just one. You could get by with just one and sterilize your jars first, and then make your brine mix after. You're also going to need a little saucepan for sterilizing your lids, and you're going to need a little magnetic wand to take the lids out of the saucepan when they're sterilized, and you're going to need a bunch of jars. And you can buy 1 liter or 1 quart jars for pickles. You can also reuse jars that you already got. If you've already, for instance, I ate some dill pickles that were in this jar. Now I'm going to reuse this jar, so I'm just going to dump all this stuff out, throw away the lid, and I'm going to sterilize the jar. And I've got new lids. You can buy new lids really cheap to put onto old jars. You always want to use a new lid rather than trying to reuse the old lid. Sometimes you can get by reusing the old lid maybe once. It might seal again, but your best bet to make sure your food is going to last is to just go ahead and get new lids. And these lids are 2-piece jobs. So you have basically you have a lid with a seal, and you have a screw on. So the lid with the seal is the part you're going to have to replace every time you use one. And the seal, the screw on top, you can just reuse those again and again and again. So that's the basics of what you need, and I'm going to make some dill pickles. Okay, so first step, you could sterilize the jars, or you could go ahead and make your brines. I'm going to go ahead and start making my brine, and then I'm going to get my jars ready. So for the brine, you need to follow the recipe, and I'm following the recipe that I've written down from what my mom gave me. And she lives in the States, so her recipes are made for quarts of pickles, and being up here in Canada, what we buy for jars are not quart jars, they're liter jars. But a quart to liter is pretty close. Like 1 quart is 1.12 liters or something like that. And so I'm just going to use the exact same recipe. One of the things that I left out in the display at the beginning for ingredients was you also need pure white vinegar. So vinegar is part of the recipe. So to make 2 quarts, which is the recipe my mom gave me, we need more than that, because we got 12 jars and maybe enough pickles to fill all 12 jars. And so what we're going to need is probably 6 times this recipe. So first of all, she says 1 cup of vinegar, so we're going to need 6 cups of vinegar. This is a 4-cup measuring cup. Used up that bottle. cups. 2 more. Even if you don't do cannon like we do cannon quite a bit here, so we always got some of this vinegar on hand. But even if you don't do cannon, vinegar is good to have on hand for cleaning and such. Alright, so 6 cups of vinegar, and she says 2 cups of water, so we'll have to get 12 cups of water. And 2 tablespoons of the pickling salt. So we got to get 12 tablespoons of the pickling salt. And actually at our store up here, we didn't have pickling salt, it was just straight pickling salt. They've already put some dill stuff in this, so this is going to be extra dill flavored pickles that we're making. Okay, and that is the mix for the brine, and we're just going to bring that to a boil, and that's what we're going to put into the jars with the pickles. Alright, I haven't turned anything on yet on the stove, but this was the brine mixture, and I just thought I'm going to get some jars going before I get the brine mix going, in terms of heating it up. So what you want to do is you got to sterilize all your jars. So on this pot will only fit 5 at a time, and you can see in there I've got this grate down at the bottom that keeps the jars off the very bottom of the canning pot. Now you don't absolutely need that grate, but it helps you preserve jars, because like I said, once you bought a jar, you can keep reusing that jar again and again and again. Even if it's a jar that you got some commercial product in, you can still reuse that jar. And so if your jars don't touch the bottom of the pot, you got a much better chance of not cracking your jars. That's what I use the grate for. So I'm going to boil those jars. I'm also going to start the lids. This is the only part of the jar assembly that you actually do need to replace each time. Like I said before, those need to boil too, those need to be sterilized too. But I'm going to start them really low and just get the water simmering on them. Once I get, it's going to take a little bit for this big of a pot to boil this water. But once I get this started to boil, I can already start canning pickles. I just need to have this boiling at the same time. So I'm going to start the jars first, give that a few minutes to get ahead, and then I'm going to start the brine. And then when I take jars out of here and can the pickles, then I'll put new jars in there. Hopefully the water will still be close to boiling, and keep the process going, and it should be fairly quick. One tool that I left out of my introduction was that you need a jar grabber. Again, you know, this kind of stuff, you buy the tool. Once you got the tool, you never got to buy it again. This is so that you can take the jars out of the boiling water without getting yourself hurt, obviously. So you need one of those. You need the magnetic wand to take the lids out of the boiling water with, and that's going to be your equipment. So I'm going to get stuff boiling, and we'll get some dill pickles on the way. Alright, so we've got boiling jars, we've got boiling brine, and I brought down Super Pickle to give us good luck. Super Pickle's a toy from 1984, and this particular Super Pickle's been dog mauled pretty good, but he's still surviving, and he's gonna give us good luck so that we can make some awesome pickles. Alright, so the process is, as I understand it from my mom's recipe, take a jar out of the boil, pour the water out, normally you would use nice clean towels to do anything with canning, but because we're not going to let our lids touch the towel, we'll be okay. Alright, so step one, you need alum powder. And so we need half of a teaspoon of alum powder in the bottom of the jar as our starting point. Getting excited, Achilles?
Achilles want a pickle? Yeah.
Kira, I can hear her in the other room too. Okay, so for each jar, half a teaspoon of alum powder. This is to keep your cucumbers crisp. Alright, the next thing you want to put, at least 1 clove of garlic. My mom's recipe calls for 2, but I think because our brine already has some garlicky stuff mixed in there, we're going to over garlic it if we put in 2. I'm going to put in 1. And now, cucumbers. So, try to fit as many cucumbers as you can in here. Some of the bigger ones for the start. A lot of small fries. Bigger cucumbers toward the bottom. You really want to squeeze in as many as you can. Right, once you got a bunch of cucumbers already kind of squeezed in there, but it's not completely full yet, your next step is taking 1 head of dill, putting that head in there. Now find some smaller cucumbers to fill the rest of this jar. Pack it really as solid as you can. And it's packed right up there. It's pretty solid. I kind of mucked up on the bottom. There is this one space, but that's okay. And now take your brine mix. It's been boiling. And you ladle that in there. This is your pickle juice. And even though we're using lots of hot stuff here, this is what's called a cold canning method, because we're not going to boil the jars after we fill them. So I'm going to fill them up. Grab one of the lids.
You need to wipe the rim before you do that.
Okay, I need a paper towel, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, yeah, if you get stuff on the lid of the jar, it can cause a problem with sealing. So wipe the lid. Get your actual lid. Place it on there. Take your screw top. Screw it on. That's 1 jar of pickles. Now, from what my mom says, you gotta wait like between 2 to 4 months between the time you put these in the jar and the time you eat them, so that the cucumbers get nice and pickled. The other thing is, if you look at recipes and stuff online, it tells you to, most of the recipes will tell you to cut the ends off of the cucumbers, or stick forks in the, in the cucumbers, fork holes in the cucumber, or in the cucumbers, or both. And I asked my mom specifically if I should do that, and she said don't do that. You should just put the cucumber in there whole. So my mom knows what she's doing, because she pretty much lived off of homemade and homegrown food, the whole time I was growing up. So I'm gonna trust my mom.
Like almost her whole life, didn't she?
Pretty much until my brother and I left home. Then they kind of like relaxed on that
Well,
stuff.
even when your mom was little, your grandma used to do it.
Oh yeah,
do this stuff.
my grandma was into this stuff too. In fact, this super pickle is my grandma's super pickle.
Yeah, so your mom lived off of homegrown food her whole life until you guys moved out.
Yeah, pretty much homegrown food, homemade clothes, all that stuff. My mom was really into like being totally self-sufficient in terms of, and frugal in her way of living. And so she was well rehearsed and all of this stuff. So if my mom tells me, don't cut the ends off the cucumbers, I'm not going to cut the ends off the cucumbers just because all the recipes online tell you to do so.
I think you can fit one more in there, don't you?
Maybe.
One more small one?
Little guy.
Yeah. See, there you go. Now it's really packed in there. And our birds are out here. Derek's being a mischief, trying to get into the bread. I see you up there, mister. Achilles is over there being excited. Kira's in her bedroom, looking out the back window. I think that's it, huh?
Yep. Let's put this lid on here. Second jar, and basically once I get all the jars in that are being that are boiling right now done, then I'm just gonna put new jars in there and keep going until I run out of ingredients. And yeah, that's how you make pickles. So.
And your mom said that these will seal themselves.
Yeah, they self-seal. Like normally you'd have to, when you're canning stuff, once you fill it, you take these and you boil them. But my mom said don't do that. for these ones. This is a cold canning method, and because this stuff was already boiling, the jars and the brine and all that stuff, these are going to self-seal themselves. These lids will pop down. When they pop down, you know that they're sealed. And yeah, and then you just let them sit and age for 2 to 4 months. And so in the winter, I'm gonna have a bunch of jars of pickles. I'm gonna do some this weekend. I'm gonna do some next weekend. You know, for as long as the farmers are selling the ingredients to pickle, I'm gonna be pickling some stuff and putting it away for winter.